So it's about 7:20 right now, but I'm coming up on the Central Time Zone border. So I think it's just right here within a mile. But heading out of Richardton, North Dakota, and the goal is to get to Bismarck today. So that'll be around 78, 80 miles. Hopefully things will go well and can get there. Yeah, it's a little overcast, so right now it's nice and cool, perfect temperature. I'll give you the all-around view of this pretty country. I mentioned the other day when I was telling about getting into kind of endurance sports that I would tell about the ride and tie. And so for those of you who don't care, you can just skip past this whole section. But my family said that they like to hear these stories, and maybe they're just trying to make me feel good, but hopefully not. So I'll go ahead and tell a little bit about the ride and tie. So I mentioned how that I ran that race with my brother Mike and my dad back in 1983, and it went well. I continued doing karate for more years after that, but that was kind of the start of getting into running, because my brother Mike with his friend Tim Fenton had done a race called the Ride and Tie. And I'll give more details about how the race works, but just at kind of a high level, Levi Strauss had started a race some years earlier because one of their marketing VPs of some kind, something like that, Bud Johns, had read an article about how in the Old West, two men had caught, I think it was like a horse thief or something like that, by just using one horse and then alternating between the two of them, running and riding. And he thought that would be a good idea for a endurance race, and so he started the Ride and Tie. And so my brother Mike had done that race with his friend Tim the year previous, and they had a great time. And so Mike thought it might be something that I would enjoy. And I loved horses. That was, when I was young, that's all I ever wanted to do, is be able to go to Fillmore and ride horses, and so it was a great passion. So it really appealed to me. And I felt comfortable with horses, so that probably helped out a little bit. But Mike said that his friend Tim had a neighbor and a friend by the name of Nick Larson. And, excuse me, needed to sneeze. And that Nick was looking for a partner to be able to do the Ride and Tie with. He had a really good Arabian horse that he felt would do good in these kind of endurance races. So this was still, I don't remember the exact time, late April, early May. I went and met with Mike and Tim and Nick, and I guess this was my trial run, unbeknownst to me, that to see if I would pan out. And you'd have to ask Nick, but I'm not sure how well I did. So Nick, at that time, to me, seemed like he was 6'3", and just a mean, tough guy. And in reality, he's probably a little bit shorter than me, but he is one of the toughest individuals you've ever met. He's one of the best uphill runners I've ever seen, and if you were ever in a fight, you wouldn't want it to be with Nick Larson. He's a tough guy. But anyway, I remember I met him and I was a little bit nervous and scared. I'm just this 25-year-old kid. He's about 9 or 10 years older than me, has a family. 3 kids, and I don't think we said many words to each other. We ran we did a trial run. We probably only went about 7 or 8 miles and thought that we had gone a long ways, and we hadn't. So we decided to partner up and run the race together. And so that summer in August, the national championship ride and tie was held in Park City, Utah. And back then in the 80s, it was easier for them to get permission to do races on land, and it's really probably what caused the race to eventually dwindle out is just all the legalities around it. But at that time there were a lot of people that wanted to do it. When we did the race in Park City, people came from all over the country and world, and there were probably over 100 teams, and the team consists of two humans and 1 horse. And the way that it works is, if you take the Park City Ride and Tie as an example, we started off in a field called Bonanza Flats, which is up above Park City on the top of those mountains. They start the race by shooting a shotgun, and then 100 horses with riders on them take off at a dead run, and it was crazy. At least 1 or 2 horses stumbled and fell, and riders were falling off and getting bucked off. And then you funnel into a small mountain trail and road, and you would just ride the horse for whatever distance strategy told you was best. Maybe it was a mile, maybe it's 2 miles, maybe it's 3 miles. And then I would hop off, tie the horse up, and start running. And in the meantime, my partner, Nick, was behind me. He would catch up to the horse, hop on it, and ride to catch me. And if he caught up to me, based on the terrain that we were on, we may decide to trade right there, because maybe I was shot running up a very steep hill. Maybe he would go another mile or 2, tie the horse, and you just flip-flop like that. There's a real strategy to it. The races were generally around 40 miles, and you also, during the race, have what are called vet checks. And there's usually 3 of them per race. And so if the race was 40 miles, they'd be evenly spaced out generally. And the key is to bring the horse into the vet check early enough to where when the runner catches up, the horse is ready to go to be able to leave the vet check and catch the runner who's out ahead. And the strategy behind it is you get the horse in and you turn it over to what's called your pit crew, which consists of friends and family members who are there, who take the horse. They'll unsaddle it, they'll bathe it in water, they'll try to keep it calm, and then they just monitor the horse's heart rate and respiration, try to get it to drink, because when the runner gets in, hopefully the horse's heart rate is down low enough, and I believe it has to be below 70 beats per minute. And then the runner, who now is becoming the rider, takes the horse into a vet. The veterinarian looks to make sure the horse is sound, trots it around, makes sure it's not lame, checks for dehydration symptoms, and then checks its heart rate and respiration. And again, I think those have to be below 70. And if it is, he'll turn the rider loose. The rider goes out on the course and tries to catch up to the runner, and then they start changing until the next vet check. If the horse comes in to be tested and his heart rate and respiration is above that set level, then there's a 10-minute penalty where the horse has to go back into the pit crew and wait another 10 minutes. If at any time the veterinarian determines that the horse is in any kind of distress, he'll just pull the horse from the race and the race is over for that team. And the race is extremely exciting. It is quite dangerous now that I look back at it. You're running up and down these hills, you're passing people and horses. We never wore helmets or anything like that. There's no way we would have put those on, which seems silly now. But we also, Nick and I rode on a McClellan cavalry saddle, which was very light for the horse. And they're pretty comfortable in some ways, but we never put padding on anything, and every year would wear these big sores on our calves that would just bleed down our legs while we were riding. And it was a tough, hard race. But there's also other strategies, like I could run faster down a steep hill leading the horse than I could running. And so you were running more than half of the race. And often people would think that, well, that's not hard, because it's 40 miles, that's really only maybe 24, 25 miles of running. Those are hard mountain run miles, plus it's not easy riding that horse in those conditions. And in fact, I remember one year that Nick and I did really well. They brought in a ringer. He had won the biggest marathon at the time in Utah was the Desert News Marathon. This guy had won it for many years, very elite runner. And he came in and they thought this team was going to win for sure, but he wasn't an experienced horseman, and we were able to beat them by a considerable amount. You have to be good on a horse, and it can be very tiring to ride it. One example of getting tired on the horse was, I think this was our second race, and we had an amazing horse by the name of Dandy. Dandy was a beautiful sorrel horse, and I really think that at the time he was probably the best horse in the country at these endurance rides. He was one reason that we were competitive. We took second place in the Ride and Tie one year. Were beaten by the Wadsworth brothers that seem to win the national championships every year. We were competitive with them up until the very last part of the race when they passed us. So we were a good team and very competitive in the nation. But one year, Nick and I were out, we were doing really good, and we were up at the top of the mountain in Park City, and you just kind of, when it was in Park City, for example, you would go from the top down to the bottom and back up. And for those of you who are familiar with the area, this is the part of the race where we, not on the main road that went down to Midway, Utah, but there are some trails that take you down there, and some very small access roads. And we were at the top going down, and I was running ahead of Nick, probably about halfway down the mountain, this very steep road with the drop off on one side and kind of a rocky embankment on the other side. Nick caught up to me and he said, in a bunch of words that Nick could intertwine together, they were quite magical, although very profane. I won't repeat them, but they were awesome. And that's how he described the horse, and said, he's all yours. And I had learned by that year to kind of tease Nick a little bit. I wasn't quite as afraid of him as I was in the past. And I said, you just need to know how to talk to him. And he said, he's all yours, pard. And so the way that I would get on the horse to save time is just grab on to where McClellan saddle doesn't have a saddle horn, but in that area, and then I'd just swing myself up on the horse and wouldn't waste any time to get going. And I did that, but I didn't have my feet in the stirrups, and the horse bolted. And it was going at a dead run down that mountain with runners and riders in front of me, and I had to yell at him to get out of the way. The horse would have run right over him, and I could not stop the horse. We hadn't figured out that we needed to put a martingale and a tie down on the front of the horse to keep him from lifting his head. We didn't have a very severe bit either, so he just took the bit in his mouth, lifted his head up in the air, and just was at a dead run. I thought for sure I was going to die. I was doing everything I could think of. I would grab one rein, pull his head all the way around, and he'd run with his head twisted around. I'd smack him. I was trying everything. He just would not stop. He loved to go. And at one time, I almost jumped off because I thought he was going to go off the ledge. Luckily, he was such a sure-footed horse that I rode him out to the bottom of the hill where the trail / access road teed into the midway road, and he stopped. I got off and I was so exhausted. My arms, I wasn't worth anything the rest of the race. He just wore me out during that period of time. And that was kind of how it was, is you had to be able to contend with those kind of things, and that made the horsemanship part of it a really fun aspect of that race. But anyway, Dandy went on, and we rode him in many other races and were competitive with him. And one race in particular was notable with him. This is when we were probably the most competitive. We went and did the national championships in Gorman, California, and it was a very big race. A lot of participants, and during that race, unfortunately, it was really hot. It was in the 90s, and the problem that Dandy had is he loved that race so much. He loved racing that we couldn't get him to drink, and he, at the very last segment of the race, after we got out of the very last vet check, Nick was running up a mountain pass that was about, 4 miles up. And Nick was so good at running uphill that he was keeping up with 2 or 3 other teams that were in front of us, that they were switching, but he was keeping up with them. And if I would have caught him, I feel pretty confident that we would have finished, if not first, in first, second, or third, something like that. But as I'm going up the hill, getting pretty close to where Nick was, all of a sudden Dandy just shut down. He just stopped, and he had given it his all and became dehydrated. I had to get off him, and I could tell he was dehydrated. There's a little test you can do where you pull the skin out, and if it doesn't snap right back in, you kind of know you're in trouble. And I was really concerned with him, so I sat there for maybe 5 or 10 minutes, and he seemed to recover, and I got on him, and I thought, oh, he's going to be okay. But probably another 100 yards, he just stopped again, and he never stopped. So I got off, just took the saddle off, and walked slowly back down the course. And I had him send somebody up, and they brought some water up, and it was sad because we would have done great in that, but it's just one of those kind of things that could happen in that race. I can't remember where Nick finished. I think he finished like 5th or 6th, just coming in by himself. So it was kind of a missed opportunity, but it's the way it goes. We ended up doing that race for quite a few years after that. Dandy, kind of unrelated to that, died of colic one year. It was really sad. It's something that can happen to a horse. They get a twisted intestine, and they operated on him, tried to save him, but couldn't. It was a very sad day for us. He was such a beautiful, incredible athlete of a horse. The athleticism of these horses is amazing. And we rode several other horses, but none of them quite compared to Dandy. I was going to see if I could think of another thing that I was going to tell you about the race. I think another thing that was so fun about that race is just the friendships that we made. We did it with, over the years, with several other teams of Gary Thane and Gary Lambert and Tim Fenton, my brother, one year, and then Tim Fenton and some other people other years, John and Tony Sieverts, and several other people who came along and rode it with us. And you just have a real camaraderie as you train. It's kind of like some other sports are somewhat similar to that, but not quite with the teamwork that you have with the ride and tie, and it made it really special and fun. I think the only disadvantage, if there was any, to doing it is I think I could have done better in, had better marathon running career, if you would call it that, had I dedicated time to marathons as opposed to the ride and tie. But I wouldn't have done that. I wouldn't have given that up for that. So I think that's everything I wanted to tell. The next story I'll tell is maybe some in marathon, my involvement within marathons and how that started and how that went. But that was the ride and tie, an amazing sport. And I kept doing karate during most of the ride and tie time frame. But after a while, I just kind of found that little injuries would occur with karate that interfered with running, and I found that running was something I could do for a lot longer period of time. And I'm glad I love karate, but I'm glad I kind of focused more on running. But that's it. Hopefully that wasn't it was too long. Hopefully it wasn't too boring. Anyway, doing okay so far at about mile 38. So after riding on the interstate for about 10 miles, it's nice to get on this little country road and be able to not have as many cars. The landscape's changing a little bit. It seems to be more desolate in a way, but it's still really pretty to me. I doubt you're going to be able to see that with this wide-angle lens, but see the houses right up there? There's a cow up on that ridge that is bigger than those houses. I can see it from several miles away. I don't know why they would have that, but it's pretty neat. It's painted and everything, black and white. I don't know, maybe there's a dairy farm up here or something, but that is really cool. These are really nice homes just out here in the middle of the plains. I'm not sure what the name of this town is. coming up, but it's really nice. The town's called New Salem. All the homes were so well manicured leading up into here. What a pretty little town. There you go. Got a baseball field, playing baseball. Doesn't get any better than that. But I just went in this little store and got a cookie, and the nice lady in that store told me about this cow up on the hill. It's their town mascot, name of New Salem Sioux, and I think it's one of the biggest cows around, something like that. Apparently you can get up to it, but I think I'll pass, and it's a long ways still to get to Bismarck down that road, and she mentioned there's not many towns between here and there, so I'll keep riding. Sometimes when I'm riding out here, I think I get a little bit tired or wonder how should I have done this, and that only lasts a second, but then I come across a place like this and look at the sky and the fields, and it reminds me why I wanted to do this. It's just kind of really a neat thing to be on a bike riding through this pretty country. So nice today. I've got not a direct tailwind, but enough that it makes it really nice to ride. So I had a little bit of one yesterday, and then today it's, oh boy, it's making up for all those days that I went with a strong headwind. It's so enjoyable. And I've already said this is really pretty country, so I'm not going to say that again. But it'll be interesting. It's probably only about 80 degrees, but it is quite muggy. I've never struggled much with, turn this way so you can see. I've not struggled that much in the past with running and in the heat, so it'll be interesting to see when I hit this muggy areas of the east how I do. I have run when I've traveled for work back in DC area and been okay, but I'm not 40 anymore, or 50 for that matter, so it may impact me more, but here's hoping that I still handle the heat well.
Okay, my name is Alfred Wald, and passerby on a bicycle happened to stop by, ask for directions, and it ended up into a few-minute conversation.
Yeah, it's been nice. And your garden looks great.
Yeah, the garden is. I got cucumbers, I got peppers, I got trying to grow a super giant onion, so I'm trying that this year, and I got carrots there, lettuce, and of course tomatoes, and
nice.
And I just ordered an irrigation kit from California this morning, so I'm going to put that on a timer once I get that. So I enjoy photography, so I can spend more time doing that.
That's great. So I'm not in Bismarck yet. What is the name of this?
This is Mandan.
Mandan, awesome.
If you're familiar with the Indian tribes, it's named after the Mandan Indians.
Cool.
Yeah, and there's a lot of history in this town, and
yeah,
and Fort Lincoln is where where Custer
Oh, really?
was
Right here.
stationed at one time. That's south of here, maybe about 5 miles, and they've still got some. What do you call it? The fort's still there, but they rebuilt it. But it's like what it was, you know. And,
Yeah. So cool.
yeah.
Hey, that's great. Well, thanks for your time. I
Yeah.
appreciate it. It's great talking with you.
Yeah, nice meeting you.
Yeah, we'll see ya. So I'm in Bismarck, and Jake and I picked a RV spot just kind of by looking at Google, and then that's where Jake drove into, and it turned out to not be a very nicest place to stay the night. It's kind of right on the freeway, and some of the services didn't work, so hopefully the KOA that we're going to will be nicer. It's about another 8 miles, so I'll have to re-record whatever I do to the 78 miles, the 77.8 miles that I already did. But I'm crossing over this river in Bismarck, and it's kind of pretty out there, and hope to get to our new place shortly. I'm riding through Bismarck, trying to get to the KOA. It's a stop and go adventure. So on today's ride, I rode about a little over 77 miles into just the other side of the river in Bismarck, and the place that we had pre-selected to stay, the RV park, was really not very good. It was right underneath the freeway, and a lot of the services didn't work, so I'd already stopped my Garmin, so I restarted it, and we'll have 2 segments, and this was 7.6 miles to get to here. Looks like a lot nicer place, so I'm glad we did that. Now I'll try to find Jake, and we'll be able to set up camp. Here's the Strava details for the 2 parts of the ride for a total of 86.5. Here's the maps for those rides, or those segments. And here's the overall mileage completed so far. Thanks for watching the videos.